Welcome to Ench Technica TV, where we bring technology into focus by talking to leaders with technology of interest to engineers. Hey, Ron, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. I've just finished my coffee, but you're probably having your evening cocktails.
I was thinking about cracking a beer while we spoke, but then I'm not sure people would know what time zone I'm in. So,
Well, you're welcome to. One of our podcasts is actually called Happy Hour, and I encouraged drinking on that show.
oh, that's funny. I, I haven't got the invite for that one. That one sounds like more fun, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I just returned from NTOPS conference.
I saw your note there. I knew them when I worked at Shaper.
I always look at those two as, what should I say, leaders in the next revolution of design.
Disruptors. Yeah.
Yeah, disruptors. That's right. That's right. So Ron is living in Budapest, I should say. Again, I think you tried to get out and they wouldn't let you back in the country, right?
Well, it's a long story, maybe for another discussion. But my wife was not able to come to the U.S. We
It's your
decided to
wife's
settle
fault.
here. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Ron. I think your wife is not of American birth, right?
She's a Romanian passport. So I'm going to be an official European resident in the next week or two.
Hey, congratulations on your election.
We walked down to the rally for Peter Magyar, and it was just the buzz there was crazy. As we're walking across the bridge, cars were slowing down and giving high fives to people walking by, honking horns, hundreds of thousands of people out there. And since that's happened, there's just been this incredibly positive vibe here in Hungary. It's uh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
amazing to see.
that's
Absolutely
amazing. I'm
great
hoping
turn
for
of events.
something similar to that come
Yeah,
come
yeah,
2 years from now.
yeah. I think that's kind of like, it's this amazing ray of hope that yeah, that change can happen like this.
Yeah, yeah. I think Orban was probably in the lead of this populist movement that then seemed to sweep the world and ended up landed in the US.
It was definitely a big rebuke
Yeah. So
of
we are in an era of strong men. So that's for sure. That's for sure. All right. So Ron, you published. The reason we're talking today is you went and published I would say, a very, very exhaustive study on marketing in the age of AI. I've got it here. I don't know if you can see it. See it. I have to apologize for the coffee stain on it, but that just proves I've been reading it.
Oh, that's excellent. No, it's battle hardened now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was so I've been working on helping start. It started with my work with the startup and then just some curiosity as I transitioned out to Hungary about how can we get really good at marketing for AEO.
Right.
And I looked around and I found a lot of pieces of information, a lot of theory, but I didn't have a practical step by step of what I needed to do. And so I decided to write it. And so what you have, the current version of it's around 35 pages. It's growing because every week I'm learning something new. It's a pretty rapidly developing and changing area. So I wrote the guide mainly to put it in paper for myself so I knew what to do, but I thought it would be fun to share and get some feedback from some others. And I've made some interesting connections with other marketers along the way over the past couple of weeks where we've had some great dialogues about how to do this. And the idea is that, we're in a different world. It's from a marketing perspective, I think it's a renaissance that takes us back to a new level of authenticity where you are being judged on the acceptance of your message, not just lining up the right keywords so somebody can find you. And so I think this learning about AEO is really learning how to take the message that you develop as a company, how to make sure that it's meaningful, but then structured in a way so the AI tools can find you. And so along that journey, I needed a way to test it and see if we're successful. So I was working on a methodology where I would take the high level messaging of either a company or an industry, describe the ideal customers, and then develop the most likely prompts that people would use and test them out across different LLMs. And I mistakenly found some things that I want to talk to you about along the way that were unintended consequences. My intention was to understand how the AI tools worked, what kind of content they reacted to, and how I could get well-formulated messages into the answer bucket of ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or whichever tool someone might be using. I took two industries. I took just a general MES industry, and then I took a segment of the CAD industry where I excluded aerospace and I excluded automotive and tried to find out if you were looking for a CAD system using these LLMs, what might happen. And that's when I thought, my gosh, I got to call Rupender because this is not what I expected. What I expected was to see references from you, to see references from other publications, maybe Develop 3D or engineering.com, our industry analyst. And in fact, most of the references were not this. I found that, and we'll stay on the CAD side because we did get some
Yeah.
trade publications make their way into the MES study. Not as many as I suspected, but on the
Okay.
CAD side, there were very few, and a lot of the references came from the vendors themselves, or in many cases, ChatGPT didn't use any references. It just used trained data. So 94% of the time, I wasn't getting a reference on ChatGPT. Gemini used, I'm sorry, the number, it wasn't 94%. It was 58%.
Okay.
And then it was much higher for where Gemini was around 94% was giving me some sort of source reference. And when I looked at these sources, what I was seeing are sometimes the vendors themselves, but then in other cases, they would actually reference a reseller. So let's say you have a reseller of SolidWorks, a Go Engineer, or one of these companies, and it seems like AI is picking this up as a neutral reference, which is really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, which is ridiculous in my point of view. But on the other hand, that could be just
Yeah,
sour grapes because hey, they didn't talk, they didn't say I was a source, right? So
no, no, and that was my aha moment where I needed to talk to you about this because,
yeah,
where are the sources that I've worked with personally with people like yourself and others in the industry, they're not showing up. And
yeah,
then when I found something you and I didn't have a chance to talk about, but I looked a little deeper, one of the sources was cited 10 times out of 50 prompts was CADSoft USA. And I thought this was a reseller, and it's not. And this site is very interesting, a bit of an enigma. I couldn't find anybody credited with owning it. I think it's run with an advertising model, and even running a Who Is on GoDaddy, I couldn't figure out who it is.
but it has
So
a ton of content on it, right? There's a ton of content on there that's CAD
they've got a
related.
ton of content, and a majority of it is either how to get a free version of this software or comparative, comparing Onshape to SolidWorks or something like that, which I think is very useful. And that, kind of led me down another path is when I saw that the most cited type of content were comparisons,
Yeah,
comparing one tool with the other.
right.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was kind of the initial findings. And my thought is, okay, as a CAD vendor, what is the best approach to aligning my message with the market so that these AI tools can consume them?
Yeah.
And I didn't come up
I
with a
think you
good
called it,
answer.
I think you called it feeding the beast. How do you feed
Yeah,
the beast?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, how do we
yeah,
feed the beast
yeah.
and do it in an authentic manner? So that was kind of the main reason I wanted to chat with you about this.
Right. No, that's yeah, welcome to do it. And by the way, I can only speak to the CAD market segment, not the MES segment. I'm halfway intelligent on that subject and nowhere near intelligent on the other. So we'll stick to CAD then if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Okay, so let me back up a little bit and tell people you have a extensive history in marketing and in CAD. And I have a similar experience in CAD and in publishing. Uh, where do we stand with AI? Because AI is taking over a lot of what we do, right? And I think a lot of journalists are wondering this. I think probably, tell me, marketers are worried about this. Like AI can do all this research, right? Theoretically, it could take the place of analysts, really, because it is doing a lot of analysis. When initial foray into this, you could really think, hey, I can do a 50-page report on a subject and not hire an analyst, which I would have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for, right? And initially, when you
Yeah.
see the report, when you get that thud factor of that report, a 100-page report, and it's well cited and it can be extremely well researched, you can have good sources among bad sources. If you look carefully, you'll find out, oh, these are questionable sources, right?
Yeah.
But it takes that
Yeah.
second look. Initial glance is like, damn, this is great. I need to use this. When I left business to business publishing to start this new venture, our CEO told us, hey, we need to use AI to write articles, right? So in that way, I thought, well, where's the future for journalists? I wasn't worried about myself because I'm always fake trying to be a journalist. I'm really just an engineer, right? But for everybody else that's starting out in the business, what hope have they?
Yeah, and boy, it's probably a bigger question than I can answer, but I still think there's an important place for trade media and analysts because of that extra level of experience to look beyond what someone might publish as a new release and be able to make a judgment that I don't think is as easy to make in an automated manner. I
Right,
think and I was probably jumping way too fast to a conclusion, but I think that there's an opportunity for journalists and analysts to actually influence these models with having comparative information and
uh,
maybe a little more structure. And when I mean structure in terms of readability, schema files and things like that, that
right,
make it easy for AI to digest. So a little foundational structure in how you publish, but I think in what's published as well. And don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like a lot of the publications are driven by advertising, and I don't often see critical evaluation
No, I'm
of
Ron.
tools or
I'm
vendors.
totally with you. I'm gonna give you my full-throated approval on that one because that's exactly why I left B2B publishing. It wasn't advertising motivated, right? It was all of my coverage. It ended up to be devoted to advertisers and their companies, right? All of it, 100%. I couldn't cover, for example, I could not cover Shaper 3D because they weren't advertising with us. I was forbidden to
Yeah.
cover that company. Even if Istvan could flew me there and put me up there and was all paid for, right? It wouldn't cost a single dime to have that coverage. I've had to pay some expenses probably. But point is, it wasn't for lack of, it was just because of the lack of advertising. They were not advertisers, they couldn't be covered. So that's industry is totally, in my eyes, been corrupted by advertising. Right.
Yeah, and I think we're in an interesting time now. If the LLMs are not seeing these publications
Yeah.
as credible, and more companies and engineers, designers are going to do their own research using
Right.
LLMs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, me, if I were working at a CAD vendor, I might be very cautious about investing advertising dollars
Oh
because
yeah.
they're no longer recognized as the authority that they once were. I'm going to age myself, but I remember back in the Unigraphics version 10 days, and Stephen Wolf had this report called the CAD report. And that
I
scared
remember.
the heck out of us, man. It was like, because if you're he called it like it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're trying to get something by him, you didn't stand a very good chance.
He
And
was actually my inspiration when I got into publishing, quite accidentally, and that's another story. He was my idol. I wish I could have that kind of influence or that kind of knowledge that Stephen Wolf had at CAD reports, and I never got that. I never got that because of that advertising orientation or influence. Uh, but yeah, he was great. Uh, Dave Weisberg was another one was
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
very influential, wrote considerably, had a great mind for details. Yeah, he was an authority. Those are the old days of Daratech. Remember, Daratech itself was
Oh
some
yeah, yeah.
authority on the
It
subject.
was a big deal to be
Right,
mentioned by Deratech
right. So
back
would you
then.
say the game was a lot easier then? I mean, you played that game. You bought advertising from companies. You don't have to name the publications, but there was this game you played. You, as in everyone played, where you bought advertising, and in return, the publishers would review your product. They would get to
Sure.
know
Yeah.
you, right? And that I would say that once you learned that game, you could play it quite well, and people knew how to do it. Nowadays, what do you do, right? Now, if people aren't looking at publications, they may be Googling, right? But now more than ever, they're using
Yeah. Well,
ChatGPT.
and if you're using Google, you're using Gemini. You've got this whole zero click world now, right? So, when you go to Google search, even before AI, and I'm going to misquote the number, but I think it was only 60% or less of
Zero
people would
click.
click through.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and now that when you get an answer on AI, there's it's gone down significantly. And,
right,
and so when you're Googling, yeah, you're participating in with Gemini. You get that AI preview, and
right,
it's very uncommon for people to click through. They're getting the answers that they need without going to the website
right.
of whoever's the source for that information.
Yeah. So you and I, experts, may chafe against this whole thing that people give it a perfunctory look at it, and it's good enough. It reminds me of the days when bloggers and everybody was a news person, and then you trusted what you got on your Twitter feed, at more or Facebook, and suddenly nobody cared about the good publications, the reputable publications like the Times or the Wall Street Journal, the
Right.
Washington Post, right, Los Angeles Times, because you had to pay for that. But here you're getting tons and tons of information for free, and it wasn't great. You kind of knew it wasn't great, right? But it was good enough, right? It was good enough, and it was
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
So this is like I think this is similar to what we're facing now with ChatGPT. It's free unless you and I pay for our versions, but for the most part, free answers, right? And okay, maybe not be good enough. It might be like, hey, okay, so VHS is not as good as Betamax, but it's the standard, right? And everybody's using it. So why
Yeah.
why not? Why not? But you ever see that movie Idiocracy?
Oh, yeah. Little close to home, that one.
I'm not going to say we're there or approaching there yet, just because I don't want to be too controversial.
I also think that the users of LLMs, which are most of us, we're all getting smarter about it as well. And
Yeah.
and I think people are checking sources. Wait a minute, I just saw this comparison, but the vendor was the one that published the comparison.
Are you
And
are you sure, Ron? Yeah, I know you are. I know I am, right?
I
The
think that
common person.
I don't I think the CAD buyer is not the common person.
Okay, okay, all
And
right, okay.
so I think if they're not there yet, I think they will be.
Uh,
And there's still a window of opportunity to influence them I'm advocating for you and the analyst and journalist community to be that trusted resource. I think there's still a window of opportunity to do that. And
yeah,
I go back to CADSoft USA. I think it was a fabulous idea. They're putting together content, answering questions that people have asked. And I don't think it replaces what we can get from a good, experienced person in the industry. I think that with another layer of validation and perspective on top of that research, you could really have something dynamite.
right.
I don't think it replaces, but I think it definitely empowers the industry to do more than it has.
Okay. Now, Ron, you wrote these reports because you had some questions and you couldn't find anybody that had done this kind of research, so you did your own.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and this is now, did you coin this phrase AEO, answer
Well,
engine optimization, or is that
gosh,
a
I wish I had, man. You know how hard it is to buy an AEO related domain now?
Oh, at first I was like, hey, why aren't chatbots finding stuff that I wrote? I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Why isn't it finding stuff I report? But then I realized, oh, well, it doesn't really trust us. Uh, I, I don't think I trust a lot of publications. I don't. There's very few objective analysts out there that I can trust. I have to say, one of the faults of it is that it's pretty much agnostic about where it's getting its information to except of course it excludes publications, right? Otherwise it gets answers from every damn place. And the fact that it gets answers from sources that I would automatically not use, right? For example, if you ask it what's a good CAD program, it can very well tell you answers that I got from a CAD program company, right? If
Yeah.
that company has, and you found this to be true, companies that are doing comparative reviews on their site, right? Which are to us in the business, it's like, okay, that's already, you could just not read that because it's going to be biased, right? It's going to have exclusions. It's not reliable. You can't have everybody, you can't have a parent saying their baby is pretty and believe them, right?
Yeah.
Everybody does that. So that's already discounted because of its source. Chatbots are not doing that. They're like, hey, that's good information. We're going to present it. And maybe they'll cite it.
Claude does citations quite frequently. Gemini does because of the different way the models are trained.
Yeah.
I think it's more because there's a vacuum of information than because they
Yeah.
are just looking for whatever they can find. I mean, if you look at, I don't know much about how this works on the consumer side, but I did have a chat with the guy who runs a business that is helping companies become more highly recognized by involving himself in Reddit conversations. And those conversations are helping them to quickly gain traction in a place that would otherwise be very difficult to do from their own websites. So it could have to do with the maturity of the information out there, the maturity of the industry.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I wish I knew the answers, and it's probably if I did, it would change tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I do think, and one of the things that I'm working on with the company I'm working with is there's a lot you can do as a publisher, and I don't mean you, but I mean any of us that are publishing websites or whatever, to help to give authenticity signals. You know, for example, if you're stating some facts, just a line on there that these facts are verified by this company on this date, or you know something that says this is verified information that gives you more of a I won't say a right, but more of a notation as an authority on there. I think there's a lot of room to do that still.
You gave me a great idea. What I'm going to do is when I do some writing, I'm going to cite Claude and I'm going to cite Gemini, right? And that will create this loop where we're recommending each other, right? Because if you buy Google ads, you're much more likely to be in there. That's a suspicion, maybe a conspiracy. If you buy Google ads, you're more likely to be featured in their regular list. They say that because you're feeding the beast, as it were, right? You're giving them some profit, so they have a inclination to favor you. So,
Hmm,
okay, I'm not
could
okay.
be.
Okay, maybe. I agree with you on that subject of there was a vacuum of information, right? Business to business publishers, because of their advertisers, again, I'm going to blame it, advertising for everything. They were not doing comparative reviews. They were absolutely,
No,
we were,
that's
yeah,
that,
it
and
was,
that's you know that's AEO 101 is write comparative reviews. And you know, in the past, I would have been very cautious about mentioning a competitor in any of my marketing materials, but
yeah,
that's exactly what gets you mentioned.
yeah,
Because nobody's doing it. And that's what the kind of questions people are asking is give me a comparison of SolidWorks versus Onshape versus Shaper and tell me
right,
which one works.
yeah,
And if
of course.
you are someone is answering those questions, then it won't have to go to one of the vendor sites as the main authority.
when I first started in publishing, like I said, accidentally, never wanted to be editor-in-chief, but I became editor-in-chief of Cadence Magazine. One of the first things I wrote about was a comparative review. This is all inside information, not been published before. So you got a scoop here for what it's worth. We did a comparative review on SolidWorks. SolidWorks was just coming out. I did a comparative review pitching Mechanical Desktop and AutoCAD against SolidWorks because it was just coming out.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a kind of a, how should I say, a foray into other things because all we're covering was we were an Autodesk-based publication, meaning Autodesk was a major publisher. We were focusing on them, but SolidWorks was just coming into the world, and we thought, hey, our publisher thought, hey, there could be some business there. Let's check them out. So there I was. I was like, the intrepid journalist. I was going to compare the two products, and I got into so much trouble, Ron, because okay, Autodesk hated the fact that we were considering any other software.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
hated that. SolidWorks hated it because we compared them not so favorably to AutoCAD. You probably can't believe this, and looking back on, I can't believe it either. But we were looking at it from an AutoCAD user's point of view. Like for AutoCAD, it's going to be much easier to transition to Mechanical Desktop. It's built on it, right? Rather than learn a whole new CAD product. So that's what we're
Right.
going in with. That premise that if you're AutoCAD user, go into that. That was not understood by John Hirschtick, right? John Hirschtick, I met him for the first time at a Endes. You remember Endes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do.
And I knew it wasn't going to go down well, right? But the publisher said, here's somebody I want you to meet. And here's Hirschtick. And Hirschtick is a tall figure. I'm not, right? I'm like looking, oh my God, how much trouble am I in? Hirsch, right? Because Hirschtick didn't like that. By the way, I had this really just as even more awkward meeting with Dominic Galello from Autodesk. I don't know if you know him because
I know of him. Yeah.
you know of him,
I think he
right?
was there when I was at Autodesk.
We had a very acrimonious relationship. At the time, we're like buddies now. Well, not buddies, but he didn't like that I kept asking him, like, why doesn't Mechanical Desktop have lofting, right? And I kept bugging him, like, you need to put this shit in because SolidWorks already has it, right? I was doing comparative reviews and I was pressuring him to get up to speed because those guys are going to eat your lunch, right? And he hated me too because I put this in print, right? So I'm not making any friends, right? I'm not making any friends. Eventually, was pressured out of Cadence Magazine because I was not, no one was happy with me. But anyhow, point is, it's really difficult to do the kind of stuff you should be doing for
Yeah.
users.
I don't know how, I mean, I'm scratching my head as to how you can make a business out of this because none of the vendors are going to want to pay you anymore. And then, of course, nobody wants to pay for the information on the consumer side. So
Yeah, yeah.
I wish
Well,
if I had that answer, boy,
yeah.
that would be amazing.
What I'm banking on is that everybody except the leader will want reviews of their products, right? And comparative reviews. So
Yeah.
it would behoove everybody who's not not a market leader, NTOP, for example, or Shaper 3D, right? So that they would want to be compared to because they need to be. Now they're putting their stuff, comparative reviews on their own site.
Right.
Eventually, I'm convinced the chatbots will realize, hey, that's pretty dumb, right? To have comparative
Eventually.
reviews
Yeah, I
on
think
your own
so.
site, right? Let's get Rupinder to publish it instead, right? And then it'll actually be credible because it'd be Rupinder saying your baby's pretty. If their baby's pretty. Now I'll have to keep my objective hat on and say,
Exactly.
be a good
Yeah.
judge of beauty there. But really that needs to happen. There has been no credible third party source of information for CAD users. So it's created this dearth of information, right? It just doesn't
Exactly.
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I'm sure we could do a lot more thorough research than I did.
yeah,
But I think if we dig deeper, we're going to keep finding that for the CAD industry.
yeah,
One thing it's a little bit of a tangent, but I want to take you there
yeah.
because I think it's
Please.
important. is what I didn't expect was the number of adjacent products that showed up in product mentions. So if
Oh,
I was structuring my prompts so that they were focused around CAD tools and design process specifically, but a lot of tools for analysis or visualization and even PDM floated, and I think I came up with close to 200 total.
really?
Yeah, quite a large number of mentions for these other tools. And I do think there's a really interesting opportunity, perhaps not for CAD design, but if you're a vendor, and I probably shouldn't mention any, but let's say you're doing AI-based design, or you're doing finite element modeling, or you're creating visualization on CAD models. I think there's a huge opportunity right now for these companies to be mentioned in the LLMs associated with CAT. As what
Right.
the LLMs are trying to do is they're trying to, even though I'm asking a narrow question, it's widening out. So, well, if you're thinking about CAD, you should also have these other capabilities. So I ask specific questions about manufacturing, about specific questions about the consumer electronics industry, industrial machinery, and it said, well, if you're in industrial machinery, these are the data management solutions that you should be looking at. So I think
Right.
there's, and I don't know how that translates to you as a publisher, but I think that to me that was super interesting. That looked the most authentic of the information that I found. Is
Mhm.
it's connecting the pieces between what tools work together.
Yeah, that's very, I think that could very well be how LLMs are used to help engineers because it's not all about CAD, it's not all about PLM. There's all these auxiliary tasks and functions that we need to do that are related. Almost like simulation is an auxiliary task for
Yeah,
designers.
yeah, and maybe that's the opportunity is to because CAD's so static as well, right? You have the same
Yeah,
5 or 6 products for the
yeah,
last 10 or 15 years with very few exceptions,
yeah,
Shaper 3D being one of them. But the changes in the ecosystem, maybe that's the battleground, and maybe that's the place that is going to be more interesting both from a publishing perspective and from a marketing perspective for these companies. If I'm marketing engineering analysis and I can associate myself with the design process, I'm gonna get mentioned straight away
yeah,
by these LLMs.
yeah. Another failure, as it were, of the business to business publishing is that they won't look at all the startups that are doing wonderful things or really timely things with AI in all of this. This companies have sprouted with AI that are doing auxiliary tasks or even directly related tasks to CAD, PLM and simulation. One person is doing it outside of publishing. You know him is Fino, right?
Yeah,
Michael Finocchiaro. Is that how you say it? Finocchio?
I think that is closer than I will get.
He's amassed a list of companies of 200 some companies. And I thought, oh my God, that's something publishers ought to be doing. Still, I get back, that bothers me is like, we look at all these reports, all these products that we to buy from washing machines to cars, right? And we have consumer reports to do that, right?
Yeah,
And or some or in other areas of tech, even we have Ars Technica or we have The Verge or something. We have good sources that do hard hitting comparative and critical reviews, right? Not just like, oh, how great, how pretty is this baby? Like how, they do critical reviews. They're not afraid to bash a product if it needs it, right? If it's really does something stupid, they'll say that. Right? They'll say that. Maybe nicer than that, but my point is so Fido has done this on his own, right?
no, it's a really good point. And,
Yeah.
Pino, if you're listening, I think you have a terrific opportunity to be the voice of reason here and to be a source for these LLMs because you're right. He's talking to these people that are shaping the future, and it doesn't mean you have to build a CAD tool. All of the surrounding ecosystem applications. Like you said, he's got a list of 200 of them, and yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
white space, right?
that's just already a service, because what else do we have? We don't have endas anymore. We don't have shows where we can look at them all and say, hey, look, here's all the, in our days, it was like, hey, here's all these MCAD products, right? Let me see which one is better. There's nothing like that now, right? So there's just people like Fido, and, I'm trying, but he's done a really good job of that. I commended him for it. But that's another failure of our publishing world, right? I think so. We need that. We got to do this research. There has to be somebody else out there. We can't depend on chat bots to do it, because one day they're going to figure out, hey, we're not going to use vendor written comparative reviews. That's not good. Or we're going to realize that, oh, these people, that Reddit may not be 100% reliable for information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I think there's probably as much of an opportunity as anything to, I don't say turn this around, but to influence them while it's still learning.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say, think that ChatGPT and Gemini are just 2 years old right now. So
Right. Yeah, they are babies still. They're learning fast. Reminds me of another movie. You must have seen it, 2001, right? Where at the end we just realizes there's a higher being, and it's Hal. It's Hal in that case, like the earliest implementation of AI I could think of at the moment. But Hal is doing this thing, and Hal learns, but there's even a higher force than that occurs at the end. Okay, we've
but
got
yeah,
to
Hal's wife. Yeah.
Hal's my Mrs. Hal. Yeah. Oh boy. All right. So yeah, I don't want to take up all your time. So you need to get to your beer and your dinner and your wife, right? All right. Excellent. Ron, great catching up. Thanks for being
Yeah,
on the show.
likewise.
All right. And I
Hey,
hope we can
thanks,
do this again.
Rupinder. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, Ron. Take it easy. Thanks for listening to Eng Technica TV. If you'd like to tell your story on this podcast, contact me at rupinder@engtechnica.com or message me on LinkedIn.